Hi, this is David Nichols. I'm CEO at Loupe. And to me, automation is why would we do something that a robot could do for us?
Welcome to today's episode of This is Automation. Today we have a special guest, remote. We have David Nichols. How's it going, David?
Hello, hello.
So I guess to get us kicked off in the right direction, we can start how we always do. And just, David, if you can, give us a quick introduction to who you are and kind of your relationship with B&R. I know before we hit record, you were telling me about writing cam automats in 2005 in your apartment. So I don't know how far back you want to go, but you apparently go back pretty far.
We'll go back all the way to the beginning. No, and not that far compared to some people that I know whose names I won't mention. That I don't want to make them feel old. But yeah, my name is David Nichols. I'm the CEO of a company, Loupe. That's Loupe, like the small magnifying glass. We're the B&R partner for a lot of the West Coast, so Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. And I've been working with B&R, as we've said, for quite a while now. I initially got introduced to B&R as it was working for another automation distribution company called Packmation. It was back in 2004 or 2005, 2006. One of the products that Packmation started working with was B&R, and I was really interested in learning about B&R because the reason that I had gotten into automation in the first place was because I was really interested in software. I was really interested in what computers were capable of doing and scripting things and programming things, and automation was just the coolest way to do that, because when you ran your code or when you hit enter, you didn't just see a bunch of pixels fly by on your screen, but something happened in the physical world. That was what really hooked me about automation. And so anyway, coming from that software background, even back then, and I think we're still proud of that and still talk about it a lot today. B&R as a software development platform, B&R as a software capability was always really distinctive and really powerful. And that was what got me hooked on it. Even back then. So that's how I got into Automation Studio, version 2 point something. It's come a long way in that time, but it's kind of maintained that power and that's something we've really taken advantage of over the years, and people really appreciate when we work together.
Nice. So I wanted to talk today kind of just in general about automation, and then a little bit about how Loupe works and some of the stuff that you guys work on, because I know there's some neat stuff that you guys are involved in, and then just more about how you see B&R fit into the automation market and kind of what makes B&R special in your opinion. But I guess before we dive too much into that, you mentioned that Loupe is a partner with B&R. So maybe could you just give us a quick intro to Loupe and your business philosophy and just a little bit about you guys.
Yeah, sure. So we've been thinking a lot about that. I think the core of our company and kind of our opinions and what we're excited about, I'd say, has been very consistent and reliable for the last 15 years or so, or 12 years since we founded the company in 2007. But we've always been engineers, so we weren't very good at describing what that was. And I've learned in the meantime that there are people called professional communicators. They're called marketing people. And they can take all those things that we hand wave about and are excited about and put that into words and images and ways of describing what you do that are really powerful. So our company is called Loupe. That's a new name for our company as of about 6 months ago. And I'd say the purpose of our company, the mission of our company, what we're all here to do and what we're excited about is really revolutionizing what's going on with machines. And there's a lot of trends, there's a lot of new possibilities, there's a lot of changes in technology recently and over the last 200 years that we think are really awesome and positive for humanity. And so we want to help push the boundaries of that and kind of help make new things possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think B&R has a similar mission, so it's I think we're aligned very well in that way. Could you talk about like what does a average customer look like for you, and within that, what does the average project look like? I know I've seen some things on social media you guys are doing with some like videographers and things like that with robotics. Could you just
Yeah.
talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I would say it's not a coincidence that we work with B&R because the product and the company we share that worldview, we share those values with B&R. That's why that's why we started working with B&R in the first place. So that's definitely something that we have in common. That's not an accident. And I would say the similar thing about our customers. So if you look at my description of what B&R is going back decades now, is that B&R is a company that provides controllers and automation technology for machines, where the technology of the machine is really what's important about it, right? There's different ways companies can be strong. Sometimes they can be strong because they have really powerful sales channels, really powerful marketing capabilities. When I think about a B&R customer, I think about a customer, usually an equipment builder, a company that makes machines as their business, an OEM, that company really distinguishes themselves on, our machines have the best technology in the world, and that's what's great about them. That's why people buy them. That's why those companies are successful is by being innovative and being really capable in terms of the technology and the machines. And so when I think about specific examples, sort of profile what's great, and both our customers and B&R customers, they're companies that are like that, and that's because they hit throughput numbers or scalability numbers that are just untouchable. So when you think about like a company that makes like bottling machines, you think about some of the biggest bottling machines and biggest bottling equipment builders in the world. You think about these huge turrets, they're moving, tens of thousands of units per hour through these machines, and you really need incredible technology to be able to achieve that and do it well and do it reliably. And that's something that in a lot of cases with our customers, that's the case as well. And it doesn't always have to be high performance. But there's always some technology leverage that's being put to work. We also work with companies that work in secondary packaging, which, if you don't know what that is, that's the end of the packaging line. It tends to be slower. It's maybe you're stacking boxes up, or maybe you're putting things in boxes. It's not what's considered the complicated or high speed part of the line. There's still a huge opportunity for technology to have an impact in those cases, and even equipment builders who make their machines completely out of bent sheet metal and stuff that would otherwise be considered dumb. You can make a great machine and bring great technology to that machine, and use the benefits of the B&R platform even on these machines that would otherwise people wouldn't think of as super sophisticated or super high end. There's still a way to make a great machine with that's technology, where technology is really the key piece of it in those contexts as well. So that's what I feel. Maybe that's a long answer, but that's what I feel like is in common with the B&R customer and people that we typically work with. So that's in industries like packaging and aerospace, people that are making computer chips or equipment for making computer chips, stuff like that.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of at the top of the episode that Loupe is a partner for B&R, and I know like distribution partners is kind of a common term in the industry, but I think the relationship that B&R has with our partners is a little bit different, and the expectations may not be exactly what people think of when they hear partner. So could you talk about that a little bit and kind of how that's different from the rest of the market?
Yeah, sure. Partner, I think, is a term that's chosen because if you say distributor, people think of a warehouse where there's a bunch of boxes on the shelves. And obviously in the B&R channel, there are such places, but it doesn't really encapsulate what the relationship is between both either our company, Loupe, and B&R, or our two companies and our customers. And I think the big difference is the sense of collaboration, the sense of we're working together on something that, if it's successful, is going to help our companies grow really a lot, and amazing things are going to happen. We're bringing pieces to the table, whether that's technology or capability, or maybe there's some programming skills or some other integration aspect where we have a contribution to make. But without people on the equipment side saying, hey, there's a great opportunity here if we can figure out a packaging machine to be able to do this, that's something where we're starting really from the whiteboard, or we're starting from that vision in, I guess one way to say it when we're talking with people is they know their industry and they know their field, they know their process so well, but we know all these aspects of technology and software and capability. And when you put that together, when you can overlap that, really amazing things are possible. So it goes much deeper than just a supplier or someone who, you give us a purchase order and we fulfill, on time and at a good price or whatever. That's what people think of when they think of a distribution company. But it's really much deeper than that for us. Both with B&R and with our customers, it's really deeply collaborative, and so we got to come up with different words to describe that other than distribution.
So maybe shifting the conversation a little bit to automation in general, it's you've kind of already touched on it. It can be really technically complex. You need knowledge of both the control side and the automation side, as well as that specific process, and that's where that partnership with the customers comes in. So I think a lot of things are changing in the market right now, as far as new technologies that are coming out. We're making, you mentioned, 200 years ago, the difference from 200 years ago to now is maybe what we'll see from now to 20 years in the future, just because of the rate at which technology is changing and the rate at which automation is being adopted. So where do you see automation making the biggest impacts right now?
I think it's a really interesting time for automation because, and what immediately pops to mind is this quote from Mark Andreessen, who's a partner, a big venture capitalist, very successful. He also was part of the founding team of Netscape, and he has this shorthand for saying software is eating the world, which it's a little menacing a little bit, but the fact is computing and the power, all of these aspects of technology, these are things that are changing extremely rapidly. They're impacting the world in really incredible ways, both positive and negative. And that's filtering into the industrial world in some of the same ways. So it has an impact literally everywhere. And if I go down the list of projects and the things that we're talking people with, you have everything from, like I mentioned, agriculture, right? Like, how do we feed the entire world? Like, automation and robotics and software has a huge role to play in the future of that. We're working on there's areas of construction. So where do houses come from? Currently, they're built by hand by people on site. So is that what that looks like for the future? And so these are things that you're talking about, fundamental human needs in terms of material, providing in a material way. These are all places where automation has an impact. So I think literally everywhere you look, there's some way that automation is going to be touching it. In fact, the other shorthand way to say that is, if you look around you, literally every physical thing around you, there's often a story of machines that about how it got to you, right? Everything comes from machines. And so if you look at, a pen on your desk, or you look at, your shoes or what, you can just imagine the army of machines that and people as well, like, no doubt about that. But like, and that's not something that people really are typically exposed to or even think about, but it's all around them everywhere they go. So that's, I think, not to go super abstract on that, but machines and production technology has a huge role to play in the lives of people, and alternative energy and other ways of it's in everything. And so that's what's really cool about what we do. We get to get involved in all those different things, and hopefully, make the world a better place by improving that.
Yeah, I know it's probably no surprise to anybody listening, but I think before I was, working with B&R and really understood how, like, even OEMs, that there even were companies making machines. I think kind
Yeah.
of my preconceived notion is, okay, Coca-Cola makes Coke, so they make the bottles and the caps and the labels, and then they put it all
Right.
together,
Right.
and they give me Coke, right? But that's like,
I
it's
had the same set of assumptions. Yeah.
yeah. So
Or,
like,
it's not like you really think about it. It's just
mhm.
like, well, I go to the store and there's Coke there. So
Mhm.
like, I don't even think about where it comes from.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So this is, I think, working with OEM customers and even the manufacturing facilities directly has given me a really unique, and maybe different perspective on just like the global supply chain. Like you're saying, you look at a pen on your desk, and there's probably a machine that does the injection molded plastic parts, and there's a
Yeah.
machine that
Hmm.
does the mixing for the inks, and there's some metal forming machine that does the clip, so on and
Hmm.
so forth.
Hmm.
So there's so much involved, and the supply chain of that is just beautiful in a way, I think.
It's invisible to most
Mhm.
people. In fact,
Yeah.
the cocktail party answer of, so what do you do? I mean, and normally I would just say robots, basically. Although it's not exactly the case always, but sometimes I would say, so there's these big buildings where everything comes from called factories. That's like the start. Let's start there. Inside the factory, there's a lot of machine, so like, and
Mhm.
I would have the same expression where you don't necessarily think, yeah, Coke would be a good example of Coke doesn't make bottling machines. Coke doesn't make the
Mhm.
machines that make the plastic that makes the mold. There's a whole world of machines behind that. And if you look at something like an iPhone, it's even more, you just sort of fly through that thing in your mind and think of all the little chips and all the circuit boards and all the plastics and materials, and all those things come from lots and lots of machines. It just is not something that most people typically have direct experience with. So it's fun, but it's fun to work on.
Yeah, for sure. It's exciting, the range of opportunities that we get to be involved with,
Hmm.
the different markets. But working with these OEM customers, what are you seeing, them driving for on their next generation machines? And obviously that trickles up from the end user. But where do you see them going in the future?
My personal bias on that question about what's the opportunity, how do you say that really succinctly to me is your machine made of software? Because a lot of machines are made of bicycle parts, and they could have been built that way 100 years ago, and that's fine. But there are a lot of new capabilities that come from software that, if you can really say with a straight face, and that's really what powers our machine. That's really the material of our machines, is software. That to me is is something that a lot of cutting edge equipment builders are thinking about. And there's different shorthand ways of saying that. The industry 4.0 is a branding or an umbrella term for a lot of the ways in which software can contribute to manufacturing. And so thinking about smaller batch sizes, thinking about how to make the equipment more flexible, and instead of being purely mechanical, those are all things that I think the the sort of leading edge equipment builders are thinking about these days, because that's where a lot of the new opportunities are. And I don't discount any of the mechanical aspects as well, because obviously they're so tightly coupled together. But when you can bring software into your machines, there's a lot of capability that's come about in the last 10, 20, 30 years, that where there's really new opportunities. And companies that do that, I think, are in a good position to grow. And the world is changing because of software.
Let's talk a little bit about robotics, which is something I know that with the ABB acquisition, B&R is getting more involved in, and I know that's something that Loupe has definitely been involved in. So
Mhm.
so what kind of problems are you solving with robotics that maybe you weren't able to before, and like where do you see the market headed with robotics?
Sure. I can tell you one of the really interesting things about robotics, and I should define what the term is. When we use the term robotics, we tend to be talking about what you would see in a car commercial where it's a 6-axis arm, it's throwing sparks everywhere because it's welding automotive body panels together. And if you look at the history of that type of device, that kind of robot, thousands and thousands and thousands of them have been built mostly for the automotive industry. And any of the robot suppliers, you can look at their charts and you can look at their internal marketing, and that's basically where they come from. It's a legacy of it. And so they're really good at doing that. If you need to weld sheet metal panels together, boy, there are so many great robots for you to use. But if you try to get them to do other things, there can be some limitations. They're not that great at doing, I'm speaking broadly here, tasks that are more flexible or not quite as repeatable as go exactly to this point and pinch together and weld and then do that over and over and over again exactly the same way. But the interesting thing is, because those robots are built thousands at a time, for what they're capable of mechanically, they tend to be really inexpensive. And so if you take the robot and you are able to inject a bunch of new software to give it an entirely new brain, then you can do some really powerful things, because they're basically lying around waiting to be used for that purpose. And so if you can augment them with other sensors, if you can make the software of them more flexible, if you can make them able to consume information from different vision systems or other sensing systems or spatial systems to make them more accurate, to make them better aligned in terms of process, to get them so that they can be more precise in time and space. There's a lot of new things that you can do with that robot besides weld auto body panels together. And so that's been a big theme of our company in the last handful of years, is using those robots, kind of lobotomizing them or giving them a lot of new software capabilities so that they can be more responsive to what a machine needs to be, or they can be more tightly integrated into a machine, so that they can do new things. And because of that interesting cost dynamic with them being readily available, there's a lot of new opportunities. And so you find robots kind of finding their way into all of these new applications where they weren't used before. And there's examples in e-commerce, in agriculture, in packaging, where the process flexibility and the software that you're bringing to bear to make that robot behave versus just run a routine, that's something that is really cool. And there are people that see that, or people that we get excited about that. We've had some awesome projects, and we've worked with that. There are examples in aerospace where you take a off-the-shelf robot, put a bunch of new sensors on it, do a bunch of spatial mapping to it, and all of a sudden it can drill holes super precisely, I guess precisely enough that they could be used for airplane and aerospace manufacturing. So that would be an example that you can look to. And there's some really inspiring companies that have work that they talk about publicly. Like, I'm a big fan and appreciator of what Electroimpact does. And other companies like that, if you haven't seen them do that, they're taking these robots and using them in new contexts all the time. And I don't see that slowing down. In fact, I see that increasing over the next handful of years. So we're pretty excited to learn a lot about how to take those robots and do new things with them.
Yeah. You said something I want to circle back on, about robots not being good at things that aren't repetitive, point-to-point movements. But first I wanted to ask you about, what's your opinion on collaborative robots? Is that something, it's one of those buzzwords. You mentioned Industry 4.0, collaborative robotics. Yeah. It's something that people get really excited about. I mean, is your opinion that collaborative robotics is, a new generation of robotics, or is it just, another product that's going to kind of find its niche and then it'll be a part of a broader, automation solution?
Sure. Well, I love a good buzzword, even though I also roll my eyes at them in a really, really hard way. It's almost like a meme, and when new things come out, people get excited about it, and we're excited about it too. When it comes to collaborative robots, I think there's two ways to think about that, and I guess I'll just these are my labels. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but when you talk about a collaborative robot, there's some robots, and ABB makes robots like this. But I have to say, you know, setting our ABB association aside, I think when people think about collaborative robots, they're thinking about like a universal.
Yep.
Like a robot that has like a low enough payload, it can't necessarily hurt you. If it bumps into you, it will stop, and you can teach it in these very human ways. And when you go and read about how new technologies come to take over the whole world, a lot of times it looks like that. Because it's a toy and its payloads are really low, and it can hardly do what my robot does. And anytime you hear that, you should be very afraid because that's where technologies come from that end up going up that curve and becoming really powerful. And I expect that to be the case for robots that look like that. ABB has a product called a Yumi. It's very similar, and so we definitely look at companies like Universal and say, yeah, you're definitely onto something here. This is latched onto something that's inspiring a lot of people. And so I'm a huge supporter of that, love that. And we're friends with the Universal distributor here out on the West Coast. But I think all that, but I think we're also coming from a background on the control side where building advanced safety capabilities into industrial machines is something that we're very comfortable with. And B&R as a platform has been really a pioneer of, I would say, for a long time. Like 5 or 10 years ago, we would talk about, hey, you can build a programmable safety system, and you can build some really interesting, powerful technology for getting operators deeper into your machines, for getting operators able to interact with your machines without hitting keeping the throughputs extremely high, right? Making so someone can walk through an entire cell and the safety system is aware of where they are and can either stop different pieces of equipment or move different parts of the machine at safe enough speeds where a person can get out of the way in a certified way, in a legitimately safe way, right? That's something that we're very comfortable with, coming from the PLC and safety control side. And so to put that together with a product like that would normally be considered a conventional robot, it has a huge payload, it has a huge reach. It's the robot exactly that you're thinking of that's shooting sparks and welding car bodies together. In our mind, there's no reason that robot can't be collaborative as well, because if you augment it with safety systems, if you're using area scanners, if you're using mats, and there's ways to safely establish where humans are and have them interacting with machines in a way that's very, very flexible. We have a robot in the middle of our workspace in Portland that it doesn't have cages built around it. It just has area scanners. So if a human or if anything comes in with range where the robot could reach it, the robot is certified to run below a safe speed. And that's enough to make the robot collaborative, even though it can move at 4 meters per second, even though it can swing a payload of 40 kilograms around. And so I feel like there's a lot of opportunities there where, that heavy industrial, that high throughput, super high speed can be made collaborative. And that's where a lot of our attention is going right now because of, the software and the safety capability is there to do it. There's no reason why this robot that can swing 500 pounds around shouldn't be able to have an operator walk up right next to it and not be scared or not be in danger. And when you can do that, I feel like it opens up a lot of new possibilities for cell layouts, for productivity, for ways of controlling robots where the humans are right up next to it. Their heads right down next to the tool point, and that's safe. We're really excited about that capability because it's putting together kind of high performance, high throughput, high speed, high payload together, but operating in a safe way, very close to humans. And there's a lot of interesting technology that's coming out that's in support of that trend as well.
I'm jumping back now to my point about robots not being good at non-repetitive tasks. Do you see that changing at all with machine learning and AI starting to find its way into industrial applications, or have you thought about that yet?
Absolutely. I think the analogy that I would sometimes use is if the process is like this might this might age me or put me within a certain range, but I just imagine like a cassette tape, and if you hit play on the cassette tape, and that basically could describe your robot process, you're probably missing some opportunities for flexibility. You're
Yeah.
probably missing some opportunities to be making decisions, defining behaviors, responding to what's actually happening with the cell or with the product or with the variability in what you're doing. Like if a cassette tape could work, then you're not you're missing something, right? Or there could be more opportunities. Even car body welding, different cars are coming down the line these days from car to car. So that's not even enough anymore for I think those kind of contexts. And so yeah, making machines that are capable of consuming information from other systems, right? That could be a machine learning system, that could be a vision system, that could be a system that's looking at a stack of boxes and saying, where are the division between the boxes, because this pallet is completely random and I need to be able to unpack it, right? All of those, the way that a robot moves, the way that a robot plans and makes decisions in terms of I'm going to pick up this and I'm going to pick up this, then I'm going to pick up this. Like those are all really valuable problems to figure out. But the cool thing, like I mentioned earlier at the start of the conversation, was there's physical limitations in the world. So how a robot moves, where a robot moves, if you don't know that ahead of time, it can be tricky. There are these mathematical things called singularities. You don't want to be running your robot through them. So how do you avoid them? What do you do so that if it tells you to pick up a box right at what would be the center of a singularity point, you probably don't want to do that. So having that flexibility, it can be tricky. What's really interesting and what we get really excited about is the degree to which all of this technology that's being developed, it really does all plug together. And whether you're making machines, or we're in the context where we are making machines, and the machines are made of computers. Well, computers can also run technology that has been developed for video games. Computers can also run user interface technology that comes from websites. And these are both areas where just billions and billions of dollars have been spent on making the coolest stuff possible. And there's no reason why it can't be used in machines, right? It all plugs together because everything is made of computers now. And so that's what's really exciting, is to kind of look in our peripheral vision and finding something from a different space, or bring it across from a place where it's considered to be normal or taken for granted even. That is really powerful. And there are development techniques, there are software tools, there are a lot of things that I think would be taken for granted or not even considered state of the art in the world of software, where if you can get them across that chasm, if you can get them across that bridge to industrial space, you can have a huge impact. So
a question I get a lot is, why would I use B&R instead of, X, Y, or Z controller? What's your answer to that question?
My answer to that question is everything that I've said so far. If you're going to use a B&R controller exactly the same way that you would use a different platform that didn't have as distinguished technology and capability and performance, and that's the only thing you're changing, first of all, I'm sure we could be more cost effective for one thing, but that's usually not enough to justify in those cases. If someone's unsure about that, it's because the foundation of the question is, I don't understand how this is different. I don't understand what I would stand to benefit from using something different. And oftentimes at that stage of the conversation, it's just hard to get that across. I think that they can be very distinctive. I think there can be very good reasons, and there are important differences.
What would you say your favorite thing about B&R, as a company is, or maybe like your favorite product? What's something that like really gets you excited?
What gets me excited about B&R is the pattern that the stuff that we work with is really ahead of the industry, and it's been that way for a really long time. And so if you want to see what a lot of big brands will be touting 5 years from now, you can just look at what B&R is doing right now. And if you go back through the history, one example that I know that, and it changes over time. A couple examples that come to mind are, this is before my time, but B&R came out with a digital networked servo drive that was running on Ethernet. No one was doing that. That was totally revolutionary. And now if you look at it, of course, that's how everything works now. And if you look at safety, if you look at the entire idea of having an integrated tool that combines a PLC and an HMI and a motion controller and a safety controller, that's something that a lot of companies nowadays will try to say that they have. And, maybe we could argue about well, they're not quite doing it exactly right, but they say that now. There was a time 10 years ago where that was unheard of. And you could go into a meeting and say, hey, see, it does all these things together. You don't have to spend all your engineering time just getting these 4 devices to coordinate with each other. You can actually make your machine, you can spend that time making your machine a better machine. And that was amazing, right? And so now everybody talks about it that way. And if you look at stuff that B&R is doing with track technology and some of these new concepts that they're coming up with, the hardest part of that actually is being on that cutting edge. Is a lot of times people will look at it and say, I don't get it. You say, well, just let it sink in for 5 years and then everybody will be talking about it. So it's again, bad on us maybe for not being able to help people see it sooner. But I know that if I keep working with B&R, I know that if I make an investment in the B&R platform, as I have, right, founding a company and working with B&R for 15 years, that it's not just a one-off thing. Hey, I love this product, right? Well, a lot of people will have that product, or that won't be such a big deal 5 or 10 years from now. But to work with a company that's constantly coming out with new technology that is revolutionary is really, really cool. And so if you're getting bored with what you have, or you feel like competitors are catching up, well, just, there's probably something in the pipeline at B&R that's coming out next that is going to be revolutionary as well. And that's something that a lot of people that have worked with B&R for a long time really do appreciate. And it's relevant to their machines. It comes from that collaboration with their clients and really responding to those needs. So it's a big picture thing, but that's what's really cool about it. And you can go down this long timeline of revolutionary things that B&R does. That's because that's what's at their core. That's what at the core of B&R is the ability to do that. That's really special.
Talking about Loupe then, what excites you about what you guys are doing right now and where you're headed in the future?
What excites me about what we're doing now is that a lot of days it doesn't feel like work, because it's like playing with toys. There's so many fun things to put together and new ideas to come up with. And, sometimes your ideas turn out to be not that great after all, but there's so many possibilities to experiment with. And the ones that make it through, that are the ones that do turn out to be really powerful. They end up helping the company grow. They end up making our company very successful. So there's just so many possibilities that it's just, the harder part is just not getting too carried away or finding a way to build a company sustainably while doing that at the same time. But to me, it's like there's so much cool stuff to play with. And I say play intentionally because it doesn't feel like work a lot of time.
So something else that I noticed that you guys do a lot of is I assume you have a really strong marketing team. I know I see your videos pop up on LinkedIn, and I'm sure anybody that goes to take a look at you guys can really get a feel that branding and marketing is important to you. Why is that important, and why is that such a part of your culture?
Well, thank you. And I said it earlier in the conversation that I feel like the core of our company has been that for a long time. And what it's taken us more than a decade to learn how to do is to have that, capture that, and have it look that way from the outside. Because if you go back in our history, we were excited about the same things. We had a lot of the same processes. A lot of the same ideas have been there for the longest time about how should you run your company, what's the right fit kind of customer, what are the cool opportunities. These are all things that have been steady, but we haven't been that good at expressing ourselves because we are engineers. We're people that make machines. We're not marketing people. We don't know how to capture that in a brand. And and in the last couple of years, it was really a couple of years ago where in trying to grow the company, and to be honest, in my opinion, failing to really connect with people. And so we would go into a meeting and we might talk excitedly for an hour or two, and then we would come out and people would say, I have no idea what they were just talking about because they seem excited, but I don't get it. And so what I learned was by collaborating with people who are marketing experts is there are ways, there's effective ways to collaborate with people who can help you put what you're excited about into words, help you put what you're excited about into images, help you put what you're excited about into video. And so I've learned and I've stolen so many ideas from people who are good at those aspects and brought them into the company because we think what we're doing is really important. We're really excited about it, and we need to learn how to express it in all those ways. If we do that, if we're successful at that, then people who relate to that, or people who are saying, people, our peers, or people who have a kinship on those kind of values, whether that's a customer or a supplier or a potential employee, people that see that and relate to it and are also excited about it are going to appear as if by magic, right? And it's really, really cool when people say that. And again, I don't assume that what we do is going to be appealing to everybody. What's important to me is it's appealing to the people who we want to work with, the people who would be great customers for us, who we'd have great relationships with. And so figuring out how to kind of blast that out into the world is something that's been a key effort in the last couple of years.
A question that some of the listeners may have, I know it's something that's been bouncing around my head. What inspired you to start your own company, and what was that journey like? And do you have any advice for anybody out there in the automation world or otherwise that may be considering a similar path?
I should put into context what happened that resulted in this company being started, which
Sure.
was, I mentioned I worked for an automation distributor, another company, and now I work for this company. So what happened there? What happened was that company was acquired. The owner of that company sold it to a larger company, and anybody who's been involved in acquisitions knows the good and the bad and the drama and this that can result. And I think I was 25 at the time. My co-founder, business partner, still to this day, Carl Robrock, was I think 28, maybe 27. And so I would say two things I would give big credit to. One, having very little to lose. At that time, I was making what I was making as an applications engineer, and I figured, if I try this and it fails after a year, then I could probably take that experience and get a much better job than I ever had before, because I would explain, I tried to start a company and it failed, and here's what I learned. And then, hey, guess what? That was a better education than I could have gotten from business school. And even though age is a factor, so where are you in your life is a factor. I would say similarly, there can be an aspect of that whatever point in your life you are, which is, I can experiment with this, I can try this, and the downside scenario is the worst case scenario is completely acceptable, because hey, I've kind of got nothing to lose, right? Or like, and so if you can engineer a way to make an experiment that you can run where if it doesn't work, no big deal. That's a good way to be, because then if it keeps going, you're like, hey, cool, I can keep doing it. For the longest time, I said we're successful because we're still a company. And that was because, we were balancing this. Yeah, we only had so much income, but we just kept it small and we grew it over time. We didn't take any funding or with a couple, friends and family kind of things, which would be typical. Again, point of privilege. Thanks to everybody who helped us in the beginning. But that's something where even now we do experiments in our company, and the experiments that we run, they're not putting the company at risk, but the ones that work are really powerful. The ones that break through end up growing the company and being really, really important. And so keeping the bets small enough to lose is something that you can do over a long period of time. And that's why 12 years into the company, I say for the longest time, we were just taking over the world slowly. because we were just, as long as what we're doing, as long as we can keep making bets, as long as we can stay alive, then we can keep trying new things, making changes. Even, it's not always the same if you're, right out of engineering school, or you're at a certain, you don't have kids, or you don't have debt, or you don't have any of these other things that are holding you back. But I'd say at any point, regardless of your situation, there can be an opportunity to say, what experiment could I run that I could tolerate losing, and if you keep doing that, you can kind of stack things up from there. So that's, if I had a business lesson, that would be it. Sometimes things really pay off, and then you can grow faster. Great.
Anything else you want to say about automation or about Loupe? Maybe plug the Loupe website where people can find out more about you guys.
Absolutely. I'm very proud. I talked about some of these branding concepts in a high level way. We just launched our new website. It's at loupe.team, LOUPE.TEAM. And yes, team is a high level domain. Team is what we are. So we're loupe.team. Yes. You can check out a lot of our media is there, our videos are there. You can see what our workspace is like, what our culture is like, our values. These are all things that we've figured out how to talk about, and we're really proud of sharing with the world. If it sounds interesting to you, we'd love to talk to you, collaborate with you, whoever you are. So LinkedIn is a really big thing for us. So follow us on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn. Again, my name is David Nichols. Send me a LinkedIn invite, and if you don't know me, then you send me a LinkedIn invite, then we will know each other and I will accept it. So look forward to meeting anybody who is interested in collaborating with that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, David. I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me, and I'm sure this will be a valuable conversation for people to listen into. So,
likewise. Thank you very much, Cory. It's been a lot of fun.
In future episodes, we're going to be diving into more exciting topics and common questions in automation. Coming up, we've got some episodes on machine vision, a special episode on robotics, a couple other exciting things coming down the pipeline, more special guests, special topics, etc. You want to make sure that you keep an eye out for those by subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you enjoy the podcast, let us know by either sending David a LinkedIn message or leaving a review and a comment on Apple Podcasts. If you want to get in touch with me, have an idea for the show, or just want to chat, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn or email me at automationpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you check out the B&R website and YouTube channel by searching B&R Automation. And of course, check out the guys at Loupe as well. They have some great content. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on This is Automation.